Chapter 1. On being the happy professor. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. The United States Declaration of Independence, July 4, 1776. We naturally look for the ultimate goal that enables us to judge other goals by how they contribute to it. Happiness is that ultimate goal, because unlike other goals, it is self-evidently good. If we are asked why happiness matters, we can give no further external reason. It just obviously does matter. As the American Declaration of Independence says, it is a self-evident objective. Richard Layard, Happiness. Lessons from a New Science. If you ask people what they want to get out of life, many are likely to respond with, "I want to be happy." A broad survey asked people to assort 16 life goals in decreasing order of importance. These goals included being rich, physical health, and spiritual growth. On top of the list, statistically tied with great/fulfilling relationships, was being happy. Of course, the challenge is, can one identify what it means to live the optimal good life? Is there a reliable recipe for happiness? What constitutes happiness, well-being, and contentment? Is there a balance to be struck between competing goals? How much should one strive to maximize pleasure, or knowledge, or wealth, or inner peace, and minimize pain, or regret, or struggle, or apathy? As is true for most things in life, there are countless relevant variables, some of which are part of our innate dispositions, our genes and temperaments. Others that are situational, a bad marriage, a great job, and yet others that constitute winning mindsets that we might adopt, all of which contribute to our likelihood of being happy and content. As a social scientist, I can confirm that there is no magical formula for achieving the lofty objective of happiness. But one can identify many necessary ingredients that, when combined properly, increase the likelihood of being a fulfilled, happy individual. The great ancient philosophers had an astute understanding of our universal human nature and how to achieve maximal happiness. In the chapters that follow, we will explore some of these ancient wisdoms, as well as contemporary empirical research regarding the good life, happiness, contentment, and well-being. We will look at key life decisions that are the purveyors of either great misery or immense happiness. The two most important of these are choosing the right life partner and the ideal job or profession. We spend much of our days either at work or with our families. If these two domains engender joy, then we are well on our way to living a fulfilled life. We will scrutinize arguably the most universal law in nature regarding the good life, namely, that all good things take place in moderation. Mathematically, this is known as the inverted U-curve, which captures the fact that too little or too much of something is worse than having just the right amount. A sweet spot in the middle, between dearth and excess, which can be applied in a wide variety of fields. As our investigation proceeds, I will argue that the path to happiness requires that we construe life as a playground. We need not lose our childlike playful effervescence as we segue from our youth to our adult years. Adults can, and should, foster playfulness in most, if not all, of the endeavors in which they partake. In conducting my scientific research, I certainly take this approach. I view science as an intellectual playground, replete with exciting twists and turns, as if on a roller coaster. Boredom, be it on a daily level or in a grand existential sense, is a bane of our existence. A rich life requires that we sample from a broad range of experiences. Variety is indeed the spice of life, in most instances, and this constitutes another topic that we will explore. I believe that he who experiences the most varied experiences from the buffet of life ultimately wins. That does not, however, mean that we go through life merely flitting from one thing to another. Many of the most transformational experiences of our lives require that we be dogged, persistent, and resilient as we take on a new challenge, be it starting a new business, beginning a new university degree, or simply losing weight. Without some optimal level of grit and persistence, few new businesses would ever have seen the light of day, and few New Year's resolutions would ever be kept. To be successful in our quest for happiness, we need to tackle life with the grit, determination, and persistence necessary to achieve meaningful goals whilst possessing a protective armor against possible, even likely, failures. Successful individuals are almost always anti-fragile when it comes to failure. They learn from their failures, but are not broken by them. The ancient Greeks thought that to seek ataraxia, tranquility of mind, was an important objective to living the good life. Regret is one emotion that can create turmoil within our inner thoughts. It can eat away at us like a flesh-eating fungus. So, we will examine regret, stemming both from actions and from actions. I regret having cheated on my spouse and inactions. I regret that I never enrolled in medical school and argue for a strategy to avoid regret and achieve tranquility of mind. Finally, I intend to show how we are truly the architects and orchestrators of our happiness. Irrespective of whether you were born with a sunny disposition or a stark outlook on life, you always have the power to affect your well-being. In my 2011 book, The Consuming Instinct, What Juicy Burgers, Ferraris, Pornography, and Gift-Giving Reveal About Human Nature, I argued that self-help books are very successful because they offer supposed solutions to many of our most fundamental Darwinian-rooted insecurities. Is there a path to retaining one's youthful vigor in the bedroom? What are the secrets to being a better parent? Is there a strategy for becoming popular amongst a group of prospective friends? What is the recipe for eating healthily and averting disease? How can one lead a life filled with purpose and meaning? In some instances, self-help books are based on time-tested ancestral wisdom, up-to-date evidence-based findings, or poignant personal anecdotes. Regrettably, in other cases, the promissory solutions are rooted in quackery, faulty reasoning, and incomplete or missing evidence. And yet, millions of people purchase these books because hope is indeed useful to combat the challenges of life. In the classic 1994 movie The Shawshank Redemption, in a letter to his friend Red, played by Morgan Freeman, Andy Dufresne, played by Tim Robbins, opines on hope. Remember, Red, hope is a good thing, maybe the best of things, and no good thing ever dies. I will be hoping that this letter finds you, and finds you well. Your friend, Andy. This is to be contrasted with something Red had told Andy earlier. Hope. Let me tell you something, my friend. Hope is a dangerous thing. Hope can drive a man insane. While it is true that false hope, hope that is easily falsified by unmet expectations, can be detrimental, genuine hope, or optimism, is an all-purpose elixir of life. It is positively linked to well-being on many levels, including improved academic and athletic performance, better rehabilitative recovery, better mental health, and greater happiness. Real hope is the necessary optimism that encourages action to tackle life's obstacles, such as changing poor lifestyle choices to improve one's health. False hope is an illusory promise sold as definitive life hacks. For instance, no amount of age rejuvenation cream is going to reverse aging. When it comes to self-help books, the Latin dictum caveat emptor, let the buyer beware, is operative. But there is a sort of science to self-help, and it is possible to distinguish between valuable, veridical advice and specious, empty promises. I trust listeners will recognize that this book dispenses the former and not the latter. On becoming a de facto global therapist, I have always had an interest in criminal psychology, clinical psychology, and psychiatry, and I toyed with the possibility of pursuing my studies in those areas. I opted against that for two reasons. First, I did not want to immerse myself in the dark aspects of the human condition, as I did not think that my personality would allow me to compartmentalize my professional work away from my personal feelings. The thought of dealing with people who impart misery onto others, or those who are victims of other people's destructive behaviors, did not sit well with me. Second, many of the therapeutic approaches in the mental health professions have historically been rooted in anti-scientific quackery. I would argue, and have argued, that the early psychoanalytic pioneers Sigmund Freud and Carl Jung fall into this category of highly celebrated quacks. Even though I eventually forged a career at the intersection of evolutionary psychology and consumer psychology, my earlier interests in mental health have materialized in several ways. In two of my previous books, I discussed the evolutionary roots of the dark side of consumption, to be found for instance in pathological gambling, eating disorders, compulsive buying, and pornographic addictions. I've also published scientific papers on obsessive-compulsive disorder, suicide, and Munchausen syndrome by proxy, examining these topics through an evolutionary lens. I soon discovered that because my work, including my popular YouTube program, positioned me as a public intellectual, and afforded me a large public platform, I was often asked for my advice on innumerable topics, ranging from personal relationships to fighting woke ideology, from life objectives and educational paths to diet tips. Moreover, I found that when I gave advice, it was among the popular content I offered over the internet. Without ever having aspired to this position, I found that I was becoming a personal therapist with a global reach. This book is one result of that. and a natural complement to my last book, The Parasitic Mind: How Infectious Ideas Are Killing Common Sense, which was about how to avoid the innumerable negative consequences of bad thinking. As a professional behavioral scientist, my usual mode of analysis and presentation is descriptive. The sad truth about happiness is much more prescriptive in my newfound role as a global therapist. This book is about how to improve your life and be happier by making smarter decisions. I should add that my last name, Sad, means felicity, happiness, and prosperity in Arabic. So if one were a fatalist, he might conclude that I was meant to write a book about happiness, existential gratitude, and a happy disposition. In my book, The Parasitic Mind, I recounted how my family and I escaped the brutality of the Lebanese civil war in the mid-1970s. I faced many brushes with death during my Lebanese childhood, and that has given me a tremendous appreciation for life and a feeling of existential gratitude. Sure, I might face some trials and tribulations, as we all do, but at least I enjoy life in a free society. Another source of existential gratitude comes from this. My parents got married when my father was 20 and my mother nearly 16. They quickly had 3 children. I came along 10 years after that. It was an accidental pregnancy, and my mother was dead set on getting an abortion. As the story goes, my parents had an argument about it. My dad was opposed to abortion on principle, but my mother was insistent that she was going to abort me. Finally, my father asked my mother's best friend, a Syrian woman named Aysen, to intervene. On the fateful day of the scheduled abortion, Aysen pleaded with my mother, "Are you sure you want to do this? You don't know what this child might amount to in life." My mother proceeded to the clinic, unmoved by this last-minute appeal. As they arrived at the top of the stairs, my mother stopped in her tracks and announced to her friend that she had changed her mind. And here I am, typing these words nearly 6 decades later. My mother first told me this story as a means of reminding me that I owed her my life, a common trait among some Lebanese Jewish mothers, and proceeded to tell me euphemistically that I had come very close to being fish food. How lovely! Life is a wondrous thing. It is statistically improbable that any one of us should exist. We are the result of a unique combination of DNA, and we should be grateful for it. We should be happy, and I can assure you I am happy. In the fall of 2021, I hosted media personality Glenn Beck on my show. Our chat opened like this, edited slightly for clarity. "Glenn, you know Gad, I was just thinking as I was walking in the studio, I so enjoy you, I watch you, I listen to you, and you know what's weird is, I associate you with happy, joyful, that's how I was just thinking. I was so excited to talk to you and I was thinking like, why? What's the last time we talked? What were we talking about? I cannot remember, but I just remember it's associated in my head with happiness. Me, you know, that is such a sweet thing of you to say, and not to engage in shameless plugging right after such a lovely compliment. But my next book, this one, is about how to live the good happy life, and it is precisely based on the fact that people say the types of things that you tell me. And I said, well, why don't I put it in a recipe book and see what comes out? Or, as one individual wrote to me on Twitter, I envy the way you have mastered the art of enjoying life. Could my happy disposition work against me in writing this book? On one of my many trips to the university library to pick up a book on philosophical approaches to happiness, my wife, who had joined me on that outing, looked at me and said, "You need to be less happy and less smiley if you want people to follow your advice. No one wants to follow the advice of someone who is too comfortable and content." She thought that to be regarded as authentic and genuine, I needed to exude an austere aura of wisdom gained through suffering. But I disagree with this assessment. While I am fortunate enough to have been endowed with a sunny disposition, that is only half the equation. The half that comes, roughly speaking, from genes. The other half comes from conscious choices, our unique life trajectories, or environmental factors that we can, in part, control. In other words, all people, from the most sullen and gloomy to the most effusive and effervescent, can implement behavioral and cognitive strategies that might augment their well-being, irrespective of their starting set points. My wife has herself an uncanny ability to see the positive in most situations. She is much like the realtor who quickly comes up with positive rebuttals to counter any negative assessments from prospective homebuyers. If a husband and wife complain that the house does not have a swimming pool, the realtor will remind them that they have young children, and hence it might be safer that no pool is available. If the client complains about the highway noise, the realtor will suggest that the highway's proximity will allow for a quicker commute. Negatives can often be turned into positives, and this silver lining mindset is truly a vaccine against life's vagaries. It is well in line with a key precept from Stoicism. As Epictetus famously opined, it's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. He also stated, there is only one way to happiness, and that is to cease worrying about things which are beyond the power of our will. These brilliant ancient insights are at the heart of one of the most empirically validated approaches in psychotherapy, namely, cognitive behavior therapy, or CBT. Many forms of suboptimal behavior or mental frailty stem from disordered thinking. CBT is a process by which a therapist helps a client identify faulty reasoning and the corresponding behavior patterns that ultimately lead to negative downstream effects. That Epictetus offered a precursor to CBT is a perfect segue to the next chapter, which explores ancient wisdom as well as current empirical insights on happiness. Thank you for joining me on this journey. I hope that this book offers you a pathway to being happier.